Hey everyone, I'm Larry Waddell, founder of Prism Inspire, and I'm here to talk about the 12 elements of client churn risk. But even more important than that, it's what to do about it. So let's jump in. So you might feel this in your gut, in those quiet moments when you're thinking about certain clients and something's not quite right. And there's a saying, I can't remember who told this to me, but I loved it when I heard it, which is that your gut is never wrong. It's not 100%, but it's never wrong. So if you're thinking about a client and something isn't sitting well, that's probably a sign that we need to take some kind of proactive action. Something's going on. So this whole talk is don't wait for that 30-day termination notice to show up. Do something. Let's jump in and figure out how to identify clients that could be at risk and then do something about them to maximize your retention. So why even do this? Like I just described, that's vibes-based risk management. So risk management by the seat of the pants, or maybe the pit of the gut, either way. So maybe one, two, or three of these, if not all of them, might resonate. So you're surprised by early terminations. You do get that 30-day notice. You're like, oh goodness, we had no idea. You talk to your account team and it's out of the blue. We had no idea that they were contemplating terminating the statement of work. Client risk is gauged by the last conversation you had or a member of your team had. So, oh, wow, that weekly check-in was awesome. The biweekly status call was fantastic. 2 weeks later, oh my goodness, I think we're in trouble. We got lit up in the status call. 2 weeks after that, hey, I think we're back on the rails. So when you find out that there is a change in leadership at your client, new CMO, new COO, new VP of whatever it is, new day-to-day POC, and it sets off this mad dash between you and your team to backfill knowledge and get somebody up to speed or wait to see what happens. And then the last one is you've got some elevated churn, or at least there's a level of client churn that you'd rather not have. And it's really hard to diagnose root cause and figure out what's going on and then obviously what to do about it. So here's the fix, and there's three components to it, and that's what we're going to talk about in this series. So first, we want to establish some model of risk, of client risk, churn risk. We got to come up with something. The second one is developing a scorecard or some kind of dashboard or something that you can track things weekly or monthly or both. And then the third thing is developing what I call get well plans for the problem children. The problem children being the clients that are most at risk and vexing you and your team. What do we do about it? We got to put a plan in place. We got to execute against that plan. So we're going to start with financial risks, and there's 12, right? So there's in a couple different buckets. The first one is financial risk. So let's take a look at those. The first one is a collection of things around performance goals. And so why is this important? Well, it's important because the beating heart of your engagement, your project, whatever you're doing with your clients, at the core of it is, does it work? Are you achieving the results that either you promised or your client's expecting, or both? But a key element of that is, do you even have goals? Are you measuring against something? And then if you do have goals, how are you tracking towards those goals? So what do you want to measure? Just the goals themselves. Now that could literally be anything. My recommendation would be something relatively easy to measure, where the juice is worth the squeeze on that KPI. Ideally, it's denominated in dollars, but I recognize different businesses roll in different ways, and that's not always possible or sometimes even appropriate. But ideally, it's something you can measure, something you can agree upon with the client, something that is a SMART goal and all that good stuff, but there is something that you're measuring. So for the purposes of risk management, do you have that in place or don't you? And are you performing at or above that goal? So there's a couple ways to think about that. There could be two questions in there to ask, or maybe you can distill that down to one. So what do you do about it? So let's say you don't have this in place. Work with the client to define success. Now, this is a crawl, walk, run. You might not always be able to tie to revenue or sales or closed won business or share of voice or whatever the metric is for your business. And if you're an agency, obviously SEO, paid, ROAS, there's so many things to measure, and some of those things aren't always possible. But don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Is there something that you and your client can hold up and say, yeah, that's a good goal for the month, quarter, year, whatever it is? And can we measure it on a weekly or monthly or quarterly basis to see how we're doing? Okay. The second one is client gross margins. So why is this important? Massive gross margins can indicate underservicing. Not always, not always. Sometimes you just price it, you got a lot of efficiency, and it's just extremely lucrative for your business. But interrogate that. If you have the ability to look at per account margins, if you see something that's an outlier, double click on it and try to understand why it's an outlier. For me, in my past, I would look at these things and I would always be a little suspicious when I'm seeing some outrageously attractive gross margins. Could it be that we're underservicing this account, or maybe there's some other reason, something that is not favorable, let's say, that could be causing that, or maybe you have hours tracking compliance problem or something like that. Who knows? So in other words, there could be nothing wrong with this client from a margin perspective, but we're not capturing all the data we should. Who knows? But the point is, don't just skip over it, double click on it, interrogate it. What to measure? Maybe there's a threshold over which or under which, or both, you worry about it. Now, I'm going to make up a couple numbers. So let's say your target gross margin is 60%. Maybe there's some trigger that says if it's under 55% or it's over 75%, throw a flag. There's a risk there of some kind, either risk to the downside, why are we burning so many hours, risk the other way, which is like, these margins are better than I was expecting they would be. So what do you do about it? So establish that account profitability reporting. If you don't have it, get it in place. Get the ability to look down a roster of your accounts on a monthly basis or dashboard basis where you can see by client what your gross margins are. Can you identify the problem children amongst them that are pulling down your average for the business as a whole? So your overall consultancy or agency could be showing decent margins, but once you look at it per client, you might discover that there's 2, 3, or 4 of them that are boat anchors just weighing on the overall margins of the business. And then figure out which one of those are upside down, which accounts, and then you can drill down. The next is client budget stability. So this is one where, in my experience, sometimes the rumors drift around the status calls, your team and the client, and your direct point of contact or POC. They've got their ear to the ground. You can imagine it could be an existential thing for them if they hear internally that there are budget cuts or shifts or something or freezes on the offing. And sometimes that gets transmitted even casually or even in humor and joking, in a joking manner with your team. But that doesn't always get bubbled up to you or others responsible for client success in a way that you would want to then take some sort of proactive action around. So long-winded way of saying you want to know as well in advance as you can get it if your project posture has to change as a result of pending budget cuts. So if there are cuts or shifts, sometimes, and I've seen this, you might, or your team might throw up their hands and say, budget's got cut, what can you do? Another way to think about that is, were they getting the value from your engagement that they were expecting or that they were hoping for? So sometimes budget cuts or even terminations, generally to a certain extent, are really another way of thinking about ROI. So it's just one thing to consider. What do you want to measure? It could just be a simple question, either weekly or monthly for your team. Have they heard any scuttlebutt around budget cuts? Yes or no? But if so, we can take some steps, and we'll get to that in a minute. What do you do about it? You can highlight your wins and QBRs. Make sure the client knows when you've gone above and beyond for them. Make sure your client knows what your ROI for them might be, or that there's wins or POVs, or there's value that you're sharing. So you want to document and demonstrate to internal and external stakeholders that you're driving value, that you're enabling things that they're doing, that they're reliant upon you and they depend on you to be successful. And you don't want to go into these sessions just like thumping your chest and look what I've done for you, look what I've done for you, look what I've done for you. But when you have a periodic check-in, whether it's as an executive sponsor or maybe in a QBR, it is not inappropriate to highlight some wins. Now, definitely make sure you highlight a few of the client's wins. It's not all about you and your business, but definitely make sure the client is aware periodically that you're going above and beyond, you're delivering things of value. Obviously, the goals, which we chatted about, there's ways that you can deliver value that's not just I ship a deliverable, but things you helped enable on the client side. If the client has no idea you've gone above and beyond, or that members of their team or extended stakeholders are reliant upon you, then if there are budget cuts, it's kind of gets easy to say, yeah, maybe we don't need these guys, or maybe we can trim their scopes back. Okay. Client share of revenue. Now, this is the one that I think is the most obvious, and I think as a business owner, certainly the owner of a consultancy or any business maybe, the percent revenue concentration for individual clients is going to be the thing people really think about in terms of risk. But the risk is really more inward facing. In other words, risk to your business because it's such a big share of the top line. But it does have its own issues. If a project is a big part of your revenue mix, yes, that is a risk multiplier unto itself. If something happens with that scope, it can destabilize your entire business. The other thing too is if it's so big, sometimes, and I've seen this happen occasionally, you might treat that client differently. You might overservice. You might drop everything else and rush to something if there's a hiccup. Not saying that you shouldn't do that, but the risk is you might neglect other clients because it's gotten so big that it's almost systemically impactful for your organization, for your company, if something were to happen with it. And that can have its own ripple effects to other clients on your book of business. So what to measure? It's really easy. It's something that many of you are already looking at, which is the percentage that any given client has of the total revenue or total SOW value, or both. So what do you want to do about it? Establish strategies to grow your other clients. So sometimes the fastest way to grow sales is to start with the clients you already have. You're already trusted, already proven. You may theoretically have a shortened path to a yes with an upsell or a cross-sell. So look at the clients who are a little bit lower down on that roster. Imagine you take all of your clients and you sort them descending based on size or percentage of total book, either way, and you're concerned about the top one or two. Look at 3, 4, and 5. They have budgets. If they're already spending $60,000, maybe they have $5,000 more if you can show the path to value for that client, and come up with concerted efforts to do that. Don't hard sell them, but maybe there's ways that you can show them new paths to value that they will reach for and pay you for. And over time, you can work those top 1 or 2 by percent of total book. You could work those percentages down even if their dollar amounts stay the same. That's also growing your business. You can certainly do that with new logos, and the answer is all of the above. So if there's things you can be doing to grow new logos, do those things. But then don't neglect your existing accounts because in theory, they can move faster.